Hi everyone, so I'm Royston and this is Brendan Leahy and we're going to talk to you about the PETAL therapy. We were meant to have a service user with us today and unfortunately they couldn't make it because of a family emergency, so you're stuck with us. And we've also put the presentation in easy read, so it's going to be nice and colourful, but we apologise that the service user couldn't be with us today, but we hope that you find it interesting anyway. So just to give, I know you've heard a lot about the PETAL programme, but just to give a little overview. So when we were designing the PETAL therapy, we used evidence from several work streams. So one being the rapid realist review, which Angela spoke to you about before, and also qualitative interviews with stakeholders. And as Andre just talked about as well, so we looked at a clinical research database, and all of the evidence from those work streams were used to inform the PETAL therapy. But we also held co-production workshops with members of the research team and also the family carers advisory group and the service users advisory group.
So I think this, for us, obviously this is where we started to come in, and from my perspective I support the learning disability or intellectual disability as the terms used in this conference this afternoon, and I had 5 team members. We've now got 4 team members, various parts of London, various backgrounds, some who either themselves actually display aggressive behaviour or they actually are experiencing it through lived experience around their work environment. One person works in a school, one person works in a supported living home, and what's really interesting is their different perspectives were able to be put across in the manuals and the work that we were doing. So as all this information in the 3 presentations already were put towards us, we were able to use that information, but then break it down in the way they understood it, to obviously put across their views in how it should maybe start to develop the manual as we went along, that would obviously be more meaningful for the group of people that would be exposed to the interventions going forward.
And we also had similar input from the family care advisory group. So there's 6 members of the advisory group, and it's facilitated by Vivian Cooper from the Challenging Behaviour Foundation. So whilst we've been meeting with them continuously and very regularly throughout the PETAL programme for the last 3 years, they were instrumental in particular in helping us co-produce the PETAL manual, but also the workbooks, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in a second, and also the therapist training programme.
I think also, actually, Rachel, what was really interesting is, because always in these situations we can have some dividing lines between family carers and people with intellectual disability, and whilst those dividing lines were clearly there in certain aspects of the language being used, etc., there were also a lot of similarities in the way that both the people with intellectual disability and the family carers actually felt about what the information that had come through from the sort of the more quantitative information. And that is always really pleasing, actually, because it can be quite challenging if there's a lot of divide. But whilst there was some talk, the language in it on occasions was questioned from maybe the family perspective, but also from the intellectual disability panel as well. I always feel there's a common ground that they have, which is obviously looking forward in this programme overall.
Yeah, absolutely. So we really took on board everything that the family carers and the service users said about the previous versions of all of the documents that we produced. And we held about 7 co-production meetings between July 2021 and April 2022 to get to where we are now. And yeah, Brendan's going to talk through some of the examples of some of the input that the service user group had throughout designing the therapy. Also, just to mention as well, so when we put the therapy together, we use the theoretical domains framework, which is a behavioural change framework, and we use that to help design how the therapy would be delivered. So this is the manuals. We've got printed copies of everything. It's quite a hefty manual, and it has session outlines for every single module, and also session plans, which are scripted for the therapist, particularly if they're delivering the therapy for the first time. So we have really given detailed information that can help them to deliver the therapy. We also have carer workbooks and service user workbooks, and they're available online, and we also send therapists printed copies, and these are for the carers and the service users to use during the intervention. It has all of the module content, it has spaces for them to write in answers and to keep track of where they're at and for them to take away, and it also has all of the home practice tasks and everything they need to do, so everything's in one place for them.
I think what's really important to mention here, obviously, as we can see from the screen, obviously, there are the two books, one carer book, one service user book. And obviously I can speak to the service user book, but I know that when we were presented by the book and we started working through the different elements of the book and we started looking at the different modules and we looked all the way through it, what was really shone out really quickly was all that input in the co-production meetings. So all the things that they had said, we could really quickly see them inside the manual, and I think from an engagement point of view, that's really important, especially for people with an intellectual disability, to see, because sometimes they can feel they're not being heard. I mean, we will talk to that later, because that can always be a way in which people will show their regression. So actually, that was a really important thing, but also in a way that obviously it's been put together in a way they understand. They had lots of comments around the wording that was being used, the colours that were being used, the right pictures with the right words, because again, it's not, obviously they are, whilst they're only a small group, they in their own way work with wider groups of people and are able to say to you, well, this is going to work, they're going to understand that, they're not going to understand this, what does this need to look like, what does that, not only the way it visually looks, but also the actual content, actually going through and saying, yeah, I don't think that's going to work, I think this is going to work, that doesn't, oh, that's not going to work, that, in, you know, I know one of the people, Lisa, was very much about the role plays in some of the training and some of the manual stuff, and it was like, please don't, no role plays, I don't do role plays, they don't work. But she didn't say it because she was against it, it was because she'd experienced it and it hadn't worked for her and was putting her point of view across. So it was really important. So yeah, from our point of view in co-production, and I know it will be exactly the same with the carers team, obviously I've spoken to Vivian a number of times, it was an identical situation, but having that input and having a physical thing at the end that they could look at and know that it's their work was really important to them to taking this to the next stage.
Definitely. And whilst I'm sure Angela mentioned earlier the phase of the programme that we're at the feasibility phase, so we're just trialling these versions of the workbooks and the manuals, so they may change slightly, but we're going to show you what we've got at the moment. So with the manual and with the therapy, we have designed it so to be as flexible and personalised and tailored as possible. So it might be that the person with a learning disability or a carer participate on their own. It could be that they take part with one family member or a direct care staff or paid carer, or it could be 3 people in a session. So that's the person with a learning disability, a paid carer and a family carer. And we have 7 modules. So getting to know the person, understanding aggressive challenging behaviour, communication, emotions, a calm environment, carer wellbeing, and healthy habits. And this intervention is designed to be up to 14 weeks. So it could be anywhere between 8 weeks and 14 weeks. And it's up to the therapist to decide and tailor the therapy to the needs of the person. So whether that person needs one session per module, or whether they need 2 sessions per module, that can be tailored. The length of sessions can be tailored to what suits the person. So if someone can only sit in a session for 30 minutes, that's absolutely fine. If the modules need to be reorganised, we do advise that the modules are completed in that set order, but if it works for a calm environment to be moved further up because the person is really struggling with aggressive challenging behaviour and the carers have expressed that they feel that they need those relaxation strategies and techniques to be moved earlier, then the therapist can do that. So we're really trying to be flexible and work towards what's going to be relevant and appropriate for that person. So for module 1, which is getting to know the person, the idea is that the therapist really assess the person's needs. So do they have any communication needs? Do they need aids? Do they need picture prompts, talking mats? And that should be ideally found out before the first session, but if not, it can be discussed in the first session to see if the therapist needs to make any accommodations for the person. And also finding out what their likes and dislikes are, kind of to build a therapeutic rapport, but also understanding the person's preferences is important for later on throughout the therapy, because they can use that information to put things in context for the person and to apply it to different parts of the sessions.
I think for us, this was actually, I know for the team and Ola, who's going to speak today, this was a really important module. I mean, I know it is at the beginning, and rightly so, because actually to really truly get some form of an intervention or an outcome that will work for that individual, because this is very person-centered, as will be shown throughout the presentation, you need to get to know the person. I mean, I don't know how many times Ola must have said in those co-production meetings, we must get to know the person, but you need to know. The first thing I do at work is I get to know the person. The problem with the people I work with is they don't get to know the person. And he was, you know, he wasn't the only person, but I think it's really right to bring forward what he would have likely have said today, because he was really pointed in that whole fact. The more you get to know the person, the more you understand them, the more you understand what their needs and their wants are in this situation, how they communicate, what friendship groups they might have, what is the behavior that actually comes out when they're not feeling great or they're trying to express their wishes. You know, Lisa mentioned, because she has been through some of this, the therapies that she went through that didn't work. So it's really, that was again another element that was really important to them, and also their overall health, because sometimes again, if we are in the obviously in this trial, we're looking at a wide range of people who will have intellectual disability, autism, as well as health conditions which impact this. They really wanted to make sure. So from our perspective, and again, I know the carers, it's the same situation, this is actually fundamentally not only the first thing, but the most important thing, because once you know the person, you've got something to build on and to keep going back to as a reference point for where you need to go to next, or where you might need to tweak things in the other elements of the module. So yeah, hopefully that brings a flavour of where the PPI team, certainly my team, were looking at when they saw this element.
Yeah, they definitely really emphasise the importance of spending time, not rushing through this module, and making sure, yeah, that relationship with the therapist is built.
Yes.
Which is just, yeah, super important for the remainder of the therapy. And I think what you said, Brendan, about Lisa mentioning about previous negative experiences, that can impact how the person is going to engage, and carers as well, how they're going to engage in the therapy. So it's important for the therapist to know at that early stage to see if there are any barriers for the person engaging, whether there's anything that therapists can address to help the person, their carers, to engage in the intervention and have hopefully some effective and successful outcomes. So that leads on, get on to, oh, so did you want to say
no.
something? So yeah, that leads on to the end of this module, which is assessing readiness for change. So does someone have the capability, the opportunity and the motivation to make changes? If there are any barriers, then hopefully the therapist can address those and make sure that, you know, the intervention starts off on the right foot, and that we're doing everything we can to help facilitate change.
Yeah, and I think Lisa did actually say that as well, was, you know, it's all right, all this stuff, but does the person want to actually do anything about this? And if they have had negative experiences with any of the other elements in that first bit at the beginning, they're less likely to. So it's understanding what their wish is to get to do, to change and to maybe move things forward, and what that looks like for them.
Definitely. So yeah, so that's module 1, and then we move on to module 2, which is understanding aggressive challenging behaviour. So this is basically an ABC model. So the trigger, what's triggering the behaviour, trying to dig a bit deeper into what they are. It's likely that there's multiple triggers of aggressive challenging behaviour, and it might not be very obvious to the person or their carers what those triggers are, but trying to investigate that further, and also spending you know, as the intervention goes on, it may become clearer what some of those triggers might be, what the behaviour of concern is, and again, there might be multiple types of challenging behaviour that are of concern. So it's important for the therapist to pinpoint those down, and then also look at how people respond to that behaviour. So it could be that the way that carers respond reinforces that behaviour. So really kind of disentangling what's going on and trying to figure out where we can intervene.
Yeah, and I think, again, just very briefly on that, we, you know, obviously in the other role that I do every day, you know, you see this very, very in your face, is the fact that, you know, the trigger for a lot of people is not having their needs met, or not things not going as were planned or maybe explained to them at the beginning of the day. That leads to a behavioural situation for them. They'll act out in various different ways because things have gone wrong. And the thing is that response at the end can actually go on all day. So even if the need or the want or the wish has been met and it's all been smoothed over and they're where they want to be, the sort of the hangover from that situation can take through the day and into the evening and into the next day. So that's, you know, that's why it's really important to understand people's structure and, you know, understand those triggers. So that's really a real important part of this at the beginning, is to see what is triggering that person. You know, then how are they acting out? Are they throwing a cup, as Michaela is doing in that picture? You know, and where does it lead to? But what is the long-term response? Because it won't be just a cup. It's, for some people, it might be an instantaneous thing, and the next minute it might be a really longer period of time, which impacts other people around them and the whole of their day, and maybe for days to come as well.
So as part of this module as well, it's about, we've included the Bossick Violence Checklist, which is about predicting behaviour. So there may be precursor behaviours such as confusion, irritability, and physical threats that may predict that it may show aggressive challenging behaviour. So we've included this in the module so that carers can practice scoring these behaviours, with the aim that if they do notice any of these behaviours, they can intervene early to prevent the escalation of behaviours into something more severe. And we've also concluded about de-escalation, so what to do when someone's showing aggressive challenging behaviour. So there's 3 steps: moving the person away, communicating with them, trying to find out what the situation is, and then trying to resolve it. So this is for people with mild to moderate learning disability, and then for people with more severe learning disability, it may be that they struggle to communicate. So rather than having the communication element, it would be more about moving the person away and creating a calm environment for them. So the therapist will go through lots of de-escalation tips and strategies that the person can use, but obviously that needs to be tailored to the person. And we also included about risk management, so making sure the person has a risk management plan, making sure that carers know how to de-escalate situations, that they only use reactive strategies such as medication and restraint as a last resort, and they also know where to get more support if they need it. And then module 3 is about communication, so how to communicate well with professionals. So whether that's using more assertive communication, planning ahead what they're going to say, asking for reasonable adjustments, so more time for appointments, so that they're able to have those discussions with professionals and have more effective communication outcomes. Also talking about the person, communicating with the person with a learning disability. Yeah, I mean, that's really important. I mean, I know, again, I'll always, through the short time we've got, I will go back to the very beginning very quickly on occasions. But again, understanding what that communication method is for that individual. How do they communicate what they're trying to say, or what their needs or their wants or their wishes are? And obviously there are so many different methods, you know, and some of them are quite recognized, and that's absolutely fine, but some are just little gestures and little nods, or they're other gestures to actually indicate what's going on. So it, you know, from our perspective here,
communication was the most important thing. And obviously on the right hand side of the picture here, you've got obviously someone's communication passport. That is fundamental for working with people with a learning disability, you know, and again, that's only done right at the beginning of this whole process. But understanding it, making sure that, and then allowing them to be able to communicate to others how they're feeling, what's going on for them, so then the right outcomes can happen for them. You know, that's really important, and that young man in the middle could definitely communicate when he needed to. So and then that's important, because then, you know, I've seen that gentleman very, very sad because he wasn't able to communicate across what was going on for him. But likewise, when he had that ability to communicate in the way and people were listening to him, you know, straight away, everything was much, much better. So from my perspective, another really important module in this manual. And again, another aspect of what the PPI team said is communicating. How are you going to communicate to me? What are you going to tell me? Be honest with me, be truthful with me, tell me where I'm really at. And then they're more able to engage in the process.
Definitely. So with this module, it's about with the carer, how they can best communicate with the person, but also with the caring network. So if you were in Karen's talk earlier, when she was talking about the case study with Barbara, you could see just how important it was that everyone in the person's network are communicating with each other and sharing information. So we provide tips for carers for how they can do that. Conflict resolution, and just making sure that everyone is in the know about that person, and also including the person in decision making as much as possible. The next module is about emotional regulation. This is for the person with a learning disability, usually on their own if they're able to. So we've made it very colourful, very engaging with the games, and it's about thinking about different emotions, being able to identify and label different emotions, and being able to express them. So using this feelings thermometer, and by playing this game, we're talking about different memories when someone's experienced a certain emotion. And it may be that this needs to be adapted for the person, so that if someone isn't able to label 5 different emotions, that's okay. It can be adapted to just look at happy and sad, if that's what the person's able to do, and the therapist can, you know, practice labeling different emotions in different ways for this module. And then if there are certain aspects of the module which would be too challenging for the person, then the therapist can remove them. But for those that are able to, there's also sections on linking thoughts, feelings and behaviour, a very brief mindfulness activity, and also mood diaries, so where the person can fill out how they've been feeling as a home practice task.
And just very, very quickly here, because I know Ola would have talked about mindfulness if he'd been here, and actually I think one of the reasons it is here is because it was something he brought forward, and it is something he practices where he works, and he said it's very, very effective, and it has really helped him working with people that he works with, and calming, you know, getting to a calm place, de-escalating situations, and again, just very quickly, I think obviously having feelings and emotions is something that people with a learning disability can find really, really, really difficult to explain. So having something like this that was colourful, that was easy to understand, that helped them understand the different levels, was really, really important to get them to think about something that a lot of the time they find quite challenging even to let people know where they're at. So that was quite important.
Thank you. So that you just mentioned relaxation activities. So that leads on to this module, which is about distraction, calming activities, relaxation activities, but doing it within the realms of what is available and appropriate for the person. So it might be that they don't have a sensory room to go to. It might be that they don't have a quiet space to go. So it's about finding out what works for the person and what is, you know, available within depending on where they live, whether they're at home or in a care setting. So we've also incorporated this calm down toolkit, as well as other relaxation activities, such as it could be anything as brief as a 2-minute YouTube video or breathing exercises, or it could be an object, it could be noise cancelling headphones to help with sensory issues, or other activities that help the person to feel calm, and how to incorporate those in the person's environment.
I think what the good bit about this is it's taking it from that personal perspective of not trying to overload or to create, you know, to say that you've got to get lots of new things in a house or in the home or whatever. It's about reaching out and using the things that are actually there and available, which the person is also going to feel comfortable with, useful and more accessible for them. That's going to take them to the place where hopefully, so it doesn't make it too complicated or too difficult to make it happen, especially in the moment when something's obviously in a distressing situation.
Yeah, I think what you said is really important, that the whole point of this therapy and what we're trying to achieve is what's going to be realistic for the person in their environment with the resources that they have, and it can be introducing small changes that could make hopefully a big difference. Module 6 is actually about carer wellbeing, so we can address everything for the person with a learning disability, but actually carers are very overburdened. They don't get that much time to themselves, and their well-being can affect how they respond to aggressive, challenging behaviour, their own quality of life, and the person with a learning disability's quality of life as well. So we've included tips on how to improve well-being, and that's making small, realistic changes to the person's routine. It could just be going on a 20-minute walk in the morning, or something really small to improve their well-being. It could be just related to sleep hygiene, like not going on their phone right before bed, which we all do, just to do small things that could help, but also managing stress. So we've included a technique on taking a step out when you're feeling really stressed, breathing, thinking about observing what's going on around you, trying to put things in perspective and thinking about how you're going to respond rather than just reacting to a situation. And we also explore support networks, making sure that carers have support networks, and if they don't, signposting them to resources and charities where they can obtain more support. And module 7, which is the final module, is about healthy habits for the person with a learning disability. So that can be, again, small changes that can make a big difference. So being healthy, relating to diet or exercise or sleep. It could be activity.
Yeah, again, activity is really important. You know, one thing I know from my own experiences is structure and having a purpose every day is really important to a person with a learning disability, no matter how small it is. Just having that routine. I go to the centre, I meet my friends, I have my lunch, I go to a class, I go here, I get whatever it, or even just getting on the bus. That general routine is really, really important to somebody. And as I was briefly saying earlier, you know, if that routine is disabled for any reason, usually out of their control, then that can really disrupt everything. So, you know, healthy food is always going to start off everything. Having a structure that they're used to, that they enjoy, that they want to do is really important. So you know, and that can sometimes take a little bit of time to actually find out, depending on their ability in communication. That leads, bizarrely though, quite nicely onto the social side of things for them, because most people with a learning disability, their social circles will always be other people with a learning disability who they'll meet by going to the activities that they like and they enjoy and they want to have fun. And the last one, yeah, just actually having fun every day, in whatever way that looks like. And that may be for some having a job, it might be volunteering, it might be going to a day centre, it might be just going to one session a day cooking or art or pottery or whatever it might be, but it ultimately leads to that enjoyment that they have at the end of the day. So having that structure can lead to that, you know, again, we've got a gentleman who's with me at my service, and on paper, a very potentially aggressive individual, but I like to hope, because of the environment that they find themselves in, with the structure that they have on a daily basis, actually the person's as calm as they can be. So, you know, so I think it's really, that's why I say it's so important, but it is the aspect of all four of these together that lead to that. Yeah, so ideally the therapist will look at every activity, every domain, and identify if there's anything that can be improved, and that can be set as a home practice task for the person to go away and to try and do, and to see how it goes, and if it's something they feel they can commit to in their normal routine.
So those are the 7 modules, and we have 2 review sessions. So one is optional, depending on timings and whether the therapist feels and the person and the carer feel that it's worthwhile. But one of the review sessions definitely needs to be used to end the therapy, to summarise the therapy content, to go over anything that anyone feels that they need more help with, to review skills that have been learned, review home practice tasks, and to identify if there are any outstanding issues. So something that the family carers in our advisory group felt really strongly about was that people needed something that they could take away. So they needed some form of evidence, because 14 weeks for an intervention, we would love for it to solve all of everyone's problems, but realistically it's not. There's still going to be some issues. So we have included a letter template for therapists to outline those outstanding issues, and the person can take that away, show that to other professionals to get referrals to other services, or it's just something that they have to have a record of what they've done and what they need. We're running out of time, so I'm just going to say very briefly that we have home practice tasks as well, and they are reviewed each week. And as we have discussed, they need to be realistic, set with the therapist guiding the person, but the aim is the therapist doesn't set the home practice tasks. It should be the person and their carers identifying what the need is, and the therapist should support and guide them to create realistic goals that they feel that they can actually achieve and that will be relevant to the person. And this is just an example of a home practice task. So this is a mood diary for the service users, and it's in their workbook, and it can be adapted for the person. So for example, if someone can't write down themselves, a carer can help them. It could be that for the how did I feel section, if the person isn't able to say, they could pick from stickers, even if that's a happy face or a sad face. So it can be adapted for the person, and it should be adapted for the person as much as possible to make it useful and relevant to them. So we're gonna need to leave it there, but just want to say thank you to Brendan for joining me today, and also a thank you to our Family Carers Advisory Group and our Service Users Advisory Group, because without them the intervention wouldn't be what it is.